But I was like, I'll swim out there, no problem. I don't give a shit. I'm wearing a 3mm neoprene wetsuit, and like I felt like I felt I've never wore anything like that. I felt like Superman, dude.
Hello and welcome. I have a few introductory thoughts before we begin. My guest today has a keen interest in sharing his experiences in river safety and river rescue. This hits close to home for me right now. I put in almost 20 years of paddling without sustaining any real injury while paddling. But a few weeks ago, while in the middle of Feather River in California, I struck a log, which I didn't see until the last minute, and I sustained a fairly serious injury to my shoulder. It's moments like that where being prepared for the contingency plan becomes critical, and a reminder to me that it's always a good idea to reflect on river precautions, safety, and rescue techniques. I want to thank my paddling partners, Will and Ben, for being calm and understanding and helping me safely out of the canyon. I want to extend a huge thanks to Elsa for being an all-around badass and hiking in a couple weeks later into the canyon to paddle out my boat and gear that I had to leave behind, as well as to an unknown group that paddled out several things the week before. I have to also extend a huge thanks to Misty, the shuttle driver, for helping to facilitate everything, and Nathan and Lucas for inching my stuff a little bit closer to home. It would have been easy for gear recovery to be somebody else's problem, and it means a lot to me that people have gone out of their way to help. Continuing on the somber note, the last story in this episode involves a fatality on the river. The incident deeply affected my guest, and it's being shared in this episode not for entertainment purposes, but in the hope that lessons learned from the incident can prevent similar accidents from occurring in the future. If you're sensitive to this type of content, please consider skipping the last story. I've inserted a warning in the show just before it begins, and there is a timeline in the show notes as well. But despite the serious nature of this intro and the subject matter, don't get me wrong, my guest today is a fun-loving, good spirit, and I think plenty of that comes through as well. I hope you enjoy today's episode. But first, consider supporting my sponsors who help keep this going. Today's episode is sponsored by Four Corners Riversports. To me, Four Corners is exactly what a paddling shop should be. It's staffed with dedicated river people who know the sport inside and out and are all about having fun and getting people outside. Four Corners Riversports is located in Durango, Colorado. They're a full-service paddle sports retail and rental store. If you're looking to get on the water, look no further than Four Corners Riversports. Call them at 970-259-3893 or visit their website at www.riversports.com. This episode is also sponsored by Taylor Barker with the group real estate Steamboat. I've known and paddled with Taylor for years, and he brings passion to everything he does. Steamboat Springs is a wonderful town with the Yampa River running right through it and has a vibrant and friendly boating community. If you're thinking of making a move to the Steamboat area or purchasing a vacation home, be sure to get in touch with Taylor. He's happy to give you a lay of the land, the real estate market, and to help find the perfect property for you. You can reach him at 336-314-4353 or by email at taylor@brokerintheboat.com. And you can find those links in the show notes. This podcast is being featured on paddlinglife.com. Paddlinglife.com does a wonderful job of finding all the most interesting happenings in the world of paddling and bringing them straight to you in the form of news, interviews, articles, videos, and more. Check out paddlinglife.com. Okay, finally, on to the show. Hello and welcome to Tales from the Crips. I'm your host, Kevin Cripps. My personal introduction to my guest today came by way of a mysterious box that I was dragging through the airport from Denver to Quito, Ecuador last November. You see, our mutual friend Tango had arranged to transport some of my guest's stuff to Ecuador, and I was given a very large box to carry, which I was told contained a coffee maker. But as I was walking through customs in Quito and the agent was eyeing this mysterious box, I began to wonder how much I could trust this guy. Sure seemed like an awfully big coffee maker. But I guess my collared shirt must have done the trick because nobody stopped me, asked me questions, and whatever arrived in Ecuador in that box, coffee maker or drugs or whatever, made it safely through. But my guest picked us up from the airport, and it was off to the hot springs, followed by multiple days of fantastic kayaking. And like he's done for so many boaters before us, my guest managed to help us navigate the constantly fluctuating flows of Ecuadorian rivers, helped us with logistics, transportation, lodging, and was all smiles on the river when we paddled together. If you've ever been to Ecuador, or even heard about kayaking in Ecuador, there's a good chance you've heard of my guest today. He's been involved in pioneering many of the rivers in the country. He runs customized river trips, rents boats, provides instructional courses. He's a major advocate for environmental causes in Ecuador. He's a go-to person for safety and logistics. He was a key organizer in helping with Ben Stooksbury's recent first D attempt down the Rio Chalupas that was featured on HBO's Edge of the Earth series. He's helped with countless other expeditions, including first Ds of his own. He's a stellar paddler in his own right with a keen eye for safety. And well, he's passing through Boulder today, and I'm honored to have him sit down with me to share some of his experiences. So welcome to the show, Abe Herrera.
Thank you, Kevin. A pleasure to be here.
Yeah, good to see you. I feel like I should be in Ecuador because that's where I'm used to seeing your face. But it's awesome to have you in Colorado for a bit.
It's nice to be here this time of the year. It's hard to beat. It's springtime and these latitudes are amazing.
Yeah, and you just got back from a nice juicy run down the Embudo and Taos Box, it sounded like.
Yeah, I feel spoiled. I've heard of it for a long time, and sometimes it runs, sometimes it doesn't, but it was never really like an option since I usually get back to the States around this time of the year just to do some quality paddling. And but this time, it was Noel said, let's go. I was in Buena Vista last week, and it turns out it's in the neighborhood. It's only like under 4 hours to get to Embudo from BV, and it was like, such a treat on the amazing creek. World class. And that upper box, it was ridiculously cool too.
Yeah.
A little sieved out, but awesome to have somebody that knows the run and in front of you. Yeah, very impressed of those desert runs. Good treats.
Yeah, I love both of those runs, and this is the year they've got a huge snowpack. Well, let's go into Ecuador a little bit. So I know this year. Well, first tell how is, I guess Ecuador is actually a little unique this year. How is the paddling there this year?
Oh, this year actually was there wasn't that many people since last year. There was so many that came down after the pandemic. Ecuador was one of the first countries to open up to travelers, and there was a huge wave of boaters, international boaters, at the beginning of the season last year that came to Ecuador, and I feel that's why this year wasn't that busy. Also because people wanted to go to Zambezi, and Chile was open again, but it was okay because we experienced a kind of low water season like I've never seen before. 4 months of no rain, which opens other kind of boating, but unfortunately there was no reports of any of the Cofanes or the Chingual being run. Also, especially because one of those, the main road towards it got wiped out after the waterfall collapsed, and then it's taken down the whole valley and took bridges and roads this year. So now to approach those runs, you gotta go long ways, longer than it used to be. But no one, I was bummed that no one ventured out there. I was recovering from a shoulder injury, so I wasn't really keen on doing too much of a heavy boat expedition yet at the beginning of the season. But we experienced dream flows in September, October, and then back in March and April we had like incredible flows all over the place. But the main November, December, January, February was quite low, which still allows kayaking, just a different feel for sure of what we used to. A little not as a steady, consistent, good flows, but anyway, weather is changing all over the place, and we can really feel it. It's undeniable.
Yeah, no doubt. I'm sure when you've spent somewhere, a place like that for years and years and years and see it change, it's eye-opening.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I know you're telling me that about you did pull out an Jondachi Fest this year. Was that first since the pandemic, or?
Yeah, and that was one of the main intentions. It was to bring it back, and not just the Jondachi, but it was try to incorporate what was the Napo River Festival that used to happen years ago, and try to incorporate more of reach out to communities that are like not just on the Jondachi, but in general, in the general area of the Napo Valley, which is around Tena. So it was small, but it was nice to have some collective efforts, because there was cultural, musical, and other kind of interactions down there with people. The festival ended up being down in Puerto Misawayi, which is past Tena, but there was a lot of people that supported the festival, so it was really cool to see local people. Usually is mostly international, and especially when it comes to the upper Jondachi race, it's just 95% of people that attends these is international boaters. Sure. And which is awesome to have this support and interest, because it's such a world-class run. And this year the flows were really nice too, for specifically for like that third week of January when usually happens. Nice. And we're planning it again for next year. And then for the following days is the rafting down on the lower Jondachi, and then the third day, which is like Saturday night or Sunday, it continues. It followed up with like the musical and cultural interventions down in Puerto Mis. So it was pretty cool, and the intention is just to grow it and make it more vast, meaning that we can bring a lot of people down the lower Napo, for example, or Puerto Mis, where they can bring inner tubes and just bring in as many people as we can, and continue to raise awareness within the local community.
Are people aware, like people around Tena in that area, are they aware of kind of that river and the beauty of it and the dangers to it at all, or is it just kind of out of their scope?
Unfortunately, local people are scared of the rivers. They just think like all these international kayakers that show up, they're just crazy people that like to scare themselves. And what we need to do, and part of these events that we're trying to create, includes floats, just like family floats and stoke floats down easy sections, which are really pretty. Like even the class 2 lower Napo from Puerto Napo to Puerto Mis is one of the coolest sections that you can do. Really good for learning, and we're trying to bring people down these sections. So the intention is like to plant a seed where they're not scared of the river. They feel comfortable swimming it, jumping in it, and understanding a little more. But also we want them to fall in love with these areas. So it's not just like a international target of like how it happens on the upper Napo, like the Hatun Yaku, the staple run, which is like class 3+4, big water. Is scary for people that are not used to and whatsoever no connection with the river. Or most population in Ecuador live up in the mountains, and it's cold up in the Andean valleys, and you don't grow up swimming in rivers and stuff. Maybe you jumped a couple times in your life, but when it comes down to that and you go to the jungle class 3 plus. It's pretty intense in this big water.
For sure.
And then so what we want to do is start bringing a lot more people down the lower section, plant the seed, and then they say, oh, this was pretty chill, what's next? So we can bring them into the Hatun Yaku, which is like premier rafting section that we have down there. But all of these is just focus on one of the main reasons to do this is the massification of use of waterways is a really good leverage for us to continue preserving these areas but which at the end is like only with the support of the local community is how we could try to preserve more of these concession areas, because unfortunately like both sides of the Hatun Yaku are concession to some multinational that are coming in to extract gold and silver and copper, and at this point there's this Chinese company that has most of the concessions out there, and they have bought out their way through into the government to be able to continue to work, even if we prove that they're being negligent and they're breaking laws. Money talks down there, and shit walks, they say. So it's we've done everything, but there is a movement within the local community trying to do everything that we can legally to slow them down, at least to let them know that there's people watching. Like the community is frustrated, but is also scared, because as we are in South America and with these corrupt governments, there's a lot of narco trafficking money that is being used for exploitation, or they're laundering this money into via I don't know, hiring people, machinery, all kinds of stuff. So it's kind of a gray area. There's been a couple assassinations this year, and that turns off a lot of people when it comes down to like be present and to or representing these front of people that are trying to watch over rivers and against mining and so that's where we are right now. Is we gotta think about a few extra things there.
What have you seen in terms of effects to the rivers from existing mining operations, many of them illegal or semi-legal? Like what have you actually seen changed in the rivers that you know?
Oh man, is devastating to witness. Every year I come back, on a period of every 6 months down to the river, and I can really tell the difference of what was the year before. And when you have like 20 excavators just working day and night, and they're constantly working and pushing material in and out of the river, and they open new channels, and then the size of these areas are like mind-blowing. They're like 20 stadium areas at the time that are like constantly plagued with machinery working constantly, and they supposed to like remediate is what they call, to leave it flat and reforest it or something like that. But after they're done with all that heavy machinery working there, it's hard to believe that will come back to be anywhere close to what it used to be, covered on trees and just a large, a very thick jungle. And then this is really just the beginning of it, because with large scale mining, like open pit mining, they're gonna just try to. Eventually, when they actually start doing like what they have planned, they're gonna start going deep, a lot deeper. But at this point, along the river, once it gets flat, it seems like the river has been collecting gold at certain depths, and then so that's why these gold fever is just so intense right now over there. And then these people, they don't care that they're illegal or they have their $250,000 machinery confiscated. They can turn around and just buy another one the next day.
Wow.
So they're negligent, and then
you squash one and another one pops up right down the road, huh?
Yeah, two of them.
Yeah.
It's So we have been bugging these people so much that the illegal mining is definitely hiding. But with recent reports from other provinces, now we know that mining is more of an issue that we actually know, because we're only paying attention to like the local recreational runs that we're trying to preserve. But rivers that are farther south and off the beaten path that we have no idea that there was any mining activities over there are completely plagued with mining activities, illegal of course, but and no one is saying nothing down there, because what that is generating work in a developing country like Ecuador. When people start figuring it out, they can make money, or they can make a lot of money sometimes. It's very hard to tell them not to do something like that.
Yeah.
So at this point, focusing on what we have available and that has some momentum towards preservation, like these wild and scenic proposal that Matt Terry from the Ecuadorian Rivers Institute has created for Ecuador is a priority. There's 12 rivers that have been declared protected, and we need to focus on those to try to preserve them as much as possible. There is whatsoever so many rivers down there that are like super high quality, and we have no idea of that they're there, because when you get to Ecuador in 2 weeks, you can't even scratch the tip of the iceberg. So
sure.
Recently, this last month of April, there was a crew exploring the south of Ecuador, and they got into so many good runs down there. Yeah, it was very nice to see that there is people motivating down there.
That's cool.
Just wait for the rainy season and go get after it. It was like really rad.
Yeah,
it's good on them.
Lots of stuff still untouched to be found. Yeah, the damage to those rivers is such a shame too, because it's not just that they're fantastic places in Ecuador, they're unique places in the world, right? Like the amount of biodiversity that exists in that region is pretty off the hook.
The highest concentration of living things per square mile, that's the Amazon jungle. So yeah, there's a lot of reasons to defend and to preserve it, and to look forward to have some clean water, clean rivers for recreating down there. It's been a mission for us for several years now, that we don't see the light at the end of the tunnel, but the fight is there. People are motivated to try to do something right now. Not many, but we just keep adding, and then the consistency is what matters right now. So by having people visiting every year is important, because it shows, it represents. Kayakers don't go unseen when they roll into town. It's,
to say the least.
You're like a circus. You got all those bright colored toys, and people are like, "Oh, what is that?" Yeah. So going out and off the beaten path, going to new drainages and stuff is important. It spreads the wealth around, just by supporting other taxi drivers, other communities. And we have, of course, established these hubs like it's Baeza and like Tena, where people come and stay for months at a time, because the logistics are so easy and everything is just so nice and ready to go. But there's several other places like these, a little farther away, but they're there to go be explored, and
So one way people can help is by simply coming to Ecuador and go kayaking in some unique places.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah,
It's it helps. It helps, and then and definitely when people gets the motivation to bring some extra equipment to donate to like some of the kayaking programs that are happening, like kid size stuff. That's very appreciated, or some older gear that you're ready to retire and you want to sell it for cheap to some local that can use it, and create more kayaking down there. I think is being our motto for since the beginning of these of since I've been going to Ecuador. Yeah, we just wanted to have more eyes on the rivers and more people to go kayaking, and little by little is finally you can see, you can feel it when you go out to other places, and all of a sudden you see you run into some new local kayakers. Is really cool.
That's awesome. Yeah, that's a good thing for me to keep in mind too if I go back down there, because it's like I'm sure I have stuff collecting dust in my garage. It's just old worn out gear, but it's super valuable to people down there that want to try to paddle.
Yeah, this is awesome to see, like some of these kids that they're so natural. They're born on the river. The kids that live on the communities along the river, that they've been inner tubing, swimming the river since they're little. All of a sudden you put them on a kayak and they're like the perfect forward stroke, perfect ferry angles, and it's fun to get to a takeout and these kids know that they're like, oh, here come the gringos. Like they jump on the kayaks, and then like they get to kayak for 10 minutes until the shuttle comes over, and then yeah, a lot of them have better forward stroke than kayakers that have been kayaking for 10 years. It's pretty funny, but they're badass. Like, yeah, super badass.
Yeah, definitely seen some great boaters out there, just not enough of them, right? While we didn't get into it in the interview, Abe wanted to be sure to give a shout out to Matt Terry at Ecuadorian Rivers Institute. Abe says one of the best ways to help defend the rivers in Ecuador is to donate to the Institute. They're a non-profit organization that works to protect and conserve unique watershed resources in Ecuador. You can find out more at their website, ecuadorianrivers, all one word, .org. That's ecuadorianrivers.org. Now back to the interview. Well, hey, let's transition a little bit, and because one of your areas of interest as you've gotten more into kayaking is kind of river safety, and kind of like my previous guest actually had kind of some of an interest in that, and it was largely informed by some of the experiences that he had on the river, and the importance of safety, and then also just kind of like what are the techniques that actually work and what don't work. And I know you have a lot to say about that, but how did this interest in river safety first form, and how did you start learning about how to deal with safety in whitewater environments?
Well, it started with a requirement to be a raft guide back in back in the early 2000s, and after I did my first river rescue class, where everything clicked from the year before that I was a rookie on the river, on the Skycomish River, after seeing a few boat wraps and flips and rescues going wrong, then everything made sense. I was like, oh my God, this is what I'm supposed to do? Okay. and then it just opened a can of worms for me all of a sudden. It was like, first the WRT, Whitewater Rescue Technician, that was a requirement. Then the WRTA, the advanced class that included some rope work, and then the TRR, Technical Rope Rescue, and then it just kept adding on. All of a sudden, 3 years later, I was an instructor. I just couldn't get enough. I did an apprenticeship up on the Skycomish River, working for a company, Wave Truck Rescue. And
what do you think? Do you think you just have an engineering mind? Like, did that those systems appeal to you, or what? What do you think?
It was just so useful, like, because I had that first year of raft guiding, being a rookie was the summer of my life. I've never had so much fun learning to raft guide and guiding clients and stuff on the White Salmon and the Wenatchee River. It was epic. But during guide training, definitely experienced a couple of rescues, including the wraps. And then like even the guides didn't know how to get the boat out or something like that. And I was so fired up. I barely spoke any English, but I was like, I'll swim out there, no problem. I don't give a shit. I'm wearing a 3mm neoprene wetsuit, and like I felt like I've never wore anything like that. I felt like Superman. Dude.
Yeah, man, you got your Superman costume on.
And then I would get to the boat, and I was like, and now what? And now like if you don't know a knot, tie a lot, they said. So, but when I learned proper rigging, started learning, it started making so much sense. And how to use pulleys and all these basic tools that are required to have on the river. And what I've learned is like you learn all these not just for yourself, for your own safety, but for your team, because all of a sudden you need to rescue somebody from behind a waterfall, or you need to anchor anything, a rope, so you can access a place or go a scout, or somebody pins a boat, and then you need to use some pulleys for that, because mechanical advantage made a lot of sense. But also after teaching rescue for 15 years now, not everybody can ideally just bust their pulleys out and build a Z-drag. If you haven't touched it, you forget. If you don't use it, you lose it. Yeah. And it's no doubt. I had this conversation many times about never have used a Z-drag on a rescue. It's only been for getting equipment and stuff. And I was like, that can be true. So all of a sudden, instead of carrying those pulleys on my PFD, because it weights it down so much more, I started carrying them in my kayak, and I felt lighter and more agile without all this equipment in my PFD. And one day we were out on the Foss and had a really bad pin. One of these kids that we were paddling with ended up with a log imploding his skirt and pinning his leg. The log was pointing upstream in the middle of these Ken and Barbie rapid, which is one of the highlights on the Foss, on the Skycomish.
It's like a class 4+ maybe kind of rapid, would you say?
Yeah, it's no hard, but this kid decided to take an extra boof on the side, and then coming back to the line, all of a sudden this log that you could not see it. It was barely underwater, pointing upstream, and all of a sudden, boom! Like, we get to the bottom of the rapid, and the kid's not coming. It's like, what happened? So I get out of my kayak. I start coming over the rocks from the bottom, and I see just like I can barely see his kayak underwater with a huge bubble over the top of it. And then thankfully he had a air pocket where he was like holding on tight. And it took us 20 minutes. His GoPro was rolling, and I was pretty upset that it took me that long to get him out, because
20 minutes for the whole rescue.
20 minutes,
wow.
But that was the first time that I actually did end up putting a Z-drag on a person, and that was the only way I could pull him out. I didn't have the pulleys on my person, so I had to run back to my boat. It took me a couple minutes, right? But in that instance, like every minute counts, right?
He's probably just getting exhausted, having the water constantly pound his back.
Constantly. He was holding on his paddle and stuff. And we don't know how long is he going to last and stuff. So anyway, we got him out, and we had to rip him right out of the kayak. He was squealing like a pig when we got him out. And
so how did you end up getting the rope like attached to him where he could brace off of it to
actually get out of it? A couple of weeks before, we had trained. I was the head coach of that year for the World Class Academy, and we were doing a Northwest tour, and part of our training included some rescue safety, and we have trained to use those rescue tethers, and that's how he actually clipped onto the rope. We got a rope across We had a big crew, so we had people on both sides of the river. We managed to get the line across, and the first thing what we tried to do was to stabilize him, because we had put a rope onto him, but he could not move. He was obviously pinned. We couldn't really tell what was going on, but we assumed. It was super hard to understand what was going on.
Yeah.
So the next thing after putting a line where he can hold on, but he can only hold on for so long. We decided to put a line across the whole river and then create an upstream or create a V, because it just gives you leverage. And that way we knew he was like able to hold on. And then it was hard to communicate with the far side, with the other side. So we had him anchoring the end of the rope, and then we were able to set the 3-to-1 or the Z drag on the river right side, and we started putting tension on that, and then he clipped on. Then we were able to tell him like clip on. So he clipped his monkey tail or his toe tether onto the rope, and that way all of a sudden he was like up and out of the water, leaning back. So we just keep putting tension on that, and as the line collected tension, all of a sudden he yelled super hard, and boom, just like snapped out of the boat, and the boat stayed in there with the log inside, but we had him. Then we just lowered one side and we were able to zip him into shore. But that way, if he would have been unconscious as well or something like that, hopefully we would have been able to like have him like pretty quicker. But that technique takes a lot of training. You got to be familiar with your equipment, and yeah, 20 minutes was kind of like upsetting. But the interesting part is that we did a post warning people about these log on the middle of the rapid, and it was interesting that a crew from Canada had reported a trip, the same exact pin, a couple of weeks before, but it took him 2 hours to get this person out. Thankfully, it was a big dude with a dry suit, and they could not get him out of there.
That's a crazy long time to be stuck in the river.
2 hours.
2 hours.
Yes, in the water.
Do you have any idea how he finally got extracted?
Kind of the same way.
Yeah.
He had to get ripped off because the log was pinning his leg inside the kayak.
Yeah.
Which sounds super savage. Imagine what it will be like to get ripped off out of your kayak.
Yeah, man.
Had a huge bruise and stuff.
I'll bet.
But I don't know how they lasted that long. It was 1 hour, 2 hours. I'm not really remembering.
Yeah, long time.
Super long. But anyway, yeah, I got sidetracked. Went from one thing to another. But safety-wise, yeah, I did a lot of training, and in order to achieve, like this knowledge where you can just bust out. That's where I was. Bust out safety equipment and start being able to act quick. You gotta train. Training doesn't necessarily mean you're learning as you go, as you work on real rescues. That's not training. That's not how you learn. You learn beforehand. And
yeah, one of the interesting things you were telling me was that you see now, like more than ever, how kids are coming up so fast. Within a year, they've gone from learning to roll to running in class 5 and getting in these tight. When you start running class 5, you get into pretty tight places, right? You might be in a walled-in gorge that you can't get out of very easily, and you kind of noted that you don't necessarily see the progression in safety skills and training, like progressing at that same rate.
Yeah, I've had this conversation with several people about how beneficial it would be to have rescue classes directed for kayakers specifically. And it does happen that people's skills, or people just focus so much on like getting better at kayaking that their rescue skills are start falling behind. And I feel like it is very important to have those skills rope skills and rescue, just like some basic understanding as you progress. You can't always rely on other people to rescue your stuff. Sometimes you're the one that have to get everybody out, and every time you show up to a put-in or to a river without a crew that you're not sure, it's good to have these kind of exchange of information. Because like in Ecuador, I end up paddling with people from all over the world in random different skill levels, and it had happened to me once that I didn't really establish these communication at the beginning, and we were running a tight creek, and then all of a sudden somebody was like ran this drop that it was obvious that had wood in it. And all of a sudden, he's giving us some river signals, and he's pointing towards the wood. And what I usually do is I point for the safe route.
Yeah.
And then
point positive, right?
Point positive,
yeah.
Correct. But of course, he has trained in a different way. He was just telling me there is wood right there. And then I went straight into the wood, and I was like, I made it somehow under the log, and then it was really scary. And I was like, what the fuck? Yeah. You sent me right into the log. And he's like, no, I was telling you to go, that's where the wood is at. I'm like, no, bro, you point away from it, because I can't understand what you're saying. I understood there was wood, and I was hoping that you were telling me to go where to go safely. But anyway, so that was another. I show up to many places in the States and announce, and I'm just trying to find a crew, and I do like to ask people what kind of training you have or what kind of equipment you have, and of course there's always going to be different, but it's good to just have these. It takes a couple minutes. Okay, so we're gonna run some hard stuff here. Like it'll be nice. Everybody's on the same page, and we point positive. Okay, everybody okay. Tap your head. You know what that means. You have swiftwater rescue training, and standardized training is like is a good way to go. But going back to the topic. A lot of people, I have run into people that have been boating for years and years, and I was like, can you set a pressic on a rope? And they're like, no, what is a pressic? It's like, oh my God, kind of frustrating trying to pull somebody out of the back of a waterfall or something like that, and on the Cispus again, and then I'm asking these kids to help out. And they're willing to run class 5. They don't even know how to set an anchor or a pressic on a rope, which are basic things that you should have on your bag of tricks.
Sure.
And anyway, they go a long ways. They will help you. And then once again, training needs to happen not during rescues. It happens beforehand.
Yeah. You want to, you referenced that Cispus race story. You want to kind of go in and talk about how, being prepared beforehand paid off in that kind of situation?
Yeah, that was an epic one for sure. Life-threatening situation, a broken femur on the bottom of a canyon up on the Mount Adams area in Washington. We had a race on the Cispus, and it was really cool race. One of the coolest racetracks I can imagine having, with Behemoth in the middle, and watching all these people go through like smoothly. And maybe 20 people raced, and it was super fun. We got to the takeout, and we were ready to party. And all of a sudden, in the afternoon, we get some people in distress coming to the takeout, to the party site, and asking for help, telling us that there is someone that had gotten injured up on the top in the gorge. And of course, we're the only people there, so a fellow kayaker is injured, so everybody, the whole party, moves up to the top to go try to help. And all of a sudden, we figured out that there was like, it was, the map shows the road sided, but it was like, who knows, I don't know, a couple 100 meters down into the canyon from the side of the road, very steep, and the injured kayaker was on the left side of the river below this island drop where he had swam and broken his femur up and after impacting either the wall or the bottom of the drop. And yeah, that sounded terrible. It was getting late. So there were some people that rally up to call 911, and the answer was like the first responders communicated that they may send a helicopter for an evac, and the closest responders were in the Cowlitz County, right? Just not too far, but it still might have taken them an hour to get up there. Mobilizing a person with a broken femur without stabilizing it and going up the hill will be very difficult without the correct equipment. So anyway, the first responders showed up with the rigging truck, and the rigging truck was full of equipment, but all the personnel was busy in Mount St. Helens on a different call. And the people that showed up, they were just volunteers that were there from search and rescue, and it was like they weren't really trained or capable of doing much, but they had radios, so we were able to communicate back to base with them. And randomly, I had taught a high-angle rescue class for Cowlitz County just a few years before, 6-8 years before. So when I identify myself with the operator, they were like, "Oh, Abe," they recognized me, and they recommended to the truck driver to do whatever I say because I asked permission to use their equipment.
That's awesome.
It was actually ideal because it was getting late in the day, and the helicopter was supposed to come from Seattle, and with only like a couple hours of light left, we wait for the helicopter, and I kind of had a little bit of experience prior with helicopters, and every time you bring a big machine like that, it's just it's very dynamic what can happen there. Weather can change, or the factor that we're at the end of the day, we only have 2 hours, they may cancel, and yeah, it's just like super complex every time you bring a helicopter, unless you're like easy access, like no Washington in the middle of a canyon at high elevation is not going to be a easy rescue, and to drop such a big distance, to drop down a recovery cable is gonna be I didn't think that would be the best option. But anyway, having a lot of people there, a lot of kayakers, a lot of kayakers are raft guides, and they have a little bit of understanding of ropes and rescue. We had to get a quick powwow and understand who knows how to rig, who knows how to do knots, and who's got equipment to swim across the creek down below. Mostly everybody had all their gear available, and so there was a rescue team, an emergency nurse that would drop down to assist the injured boater. So we had a full-on crew going on over there. And so we sent some riggers to start putting some ropes across the canyon, and thankfully we had a lot of equipment available to us. So long story short, it took us, I don't know, a couple of hours since we started rigging to actually extract the person that was injured and put him into the ambulance. It was kind of cool to organize, kind of organize so many people. You know how everybody's scattered all over the place, but having accountability of your team is very important as well, so nobody else gets injured. So we only sent a couple people down there to assist the person, a couple people to assist with the rigging, and then all of a sudden we had 30 people ready to pull on a rope, and we were able to extract them from the bottom of the canyon on on a Stokes litter, like connected to the main line with a tag line, and we were able to smoothly bring him up and set him out of danger that night, because spending the night in the bottom of a canyon with a broken femur would have not been fun.
No.
Yeah.
Potentially life-threatening at that point. Yeah.
So that was a happy ending story. It was kind of cool.
That's really cool. Did you have, like, as taking leadership of that, did you feel like you knew what you were doing the whole time, or did you start to have doubts, or did you make mistakes along the way that you had to correct?
So thankfully, through rescue training, you talk a lot about these, like you need to have, somebody has to take control over it. Otherwise, is a disorganized scene with so many people is hard.
Yeah.
But
I've been there, right? Where multiple people are all trying to be the leaders, and it's just
too many chiefs, not enough Indians.
3 people doing different things, and nothing works.
Nothing works. Yeah. And in this case, I went and took over for sure. I became the incident commander, IC, and then I started I tried to be hands off, which is very hard in a situation like that, with so many moving parts. But I was able to stay on top with the radio and start communicating with like the little teams that we made, and try to during formal training you learn to do these, and so it paid off, all that training, when it comes to real rescue scenario, and being as complex as that was. It was kind of cool to see it work,
Oh, yeah.
Like real rescues happen a lot, but like not at that magnitude, and not that you want to deal with that, but it's nice to have that in the back of your head, that you're like, okay, we can manage these ourselves and not have to depend. And that comes from exploring Ecuador, because down there, basically we are the ones that get called when anything happens in the river or in surrounding areas. We get pulled in to help out.
When they hit the spot, they're calling you.
Right. Exactly.
So if you're the one in the canyon, that doesn't do much good.
If you call 911, everything goes around until they find us to go help them out. And then with that said, and that was part of the motivation to learn all these rescue techniques, was to go to Ecuador and be self-sufficient, because I know that until the special forces or somebody that has the equipment and the knowledge and the balls to go drop into canyon in the middle of the jungle are very, very, very difficult situations. So if we are like self-sustained, it will be really cool. And it gives you the confidence just to go and explore. And right now there's now that we have a lot more local kayakers, and it's nice to talk to the kids about these things. They're like trying to ask information. What do I need to do if I want to go do a first descent? And what kind of training do you suggest? What kind of equipment do you need? And it's like, the list just never ends, really. You can never be prepared for everything, but being proactive is way better than being reactive, and then finding yourself that you don't have the equipment necessary. So I'm guilty of bringing too much shit when I go into expeditions, and a lot of times you don't even get to use it, but at least you know in the back of your head that if something bad happens, or if you need it, that ascender, or being able to ascend on a rope, and when you're like willing to go explore a canyon for the first time, whether it's a first ascent or not, or something like that, is it's a good skill to have, or to learn how to do if you had to climb a rope.
If you're getting into those situations, it's important. It's kind of like a helmet, right? You hope you don't need it, but when you need it, you really need it, right?
And a lot of those things, my rescue kit I try to keep it basic and to be minimalistic, but you gotta know how to use it, and the different ways to use the same equipment. Carabiners and pressics for ascending a rope, for example, is like, it can be done. You don't need to carry an ascender with you necessarily. Nowadays, all the gear gets better and better and smaller and lighter, but not that you want to be carrying a lot of these all the time. It just adds an expedition.
It's a balance, right?
It's hard to find that balance, but a good rope,
I think you were telling me you had some story about the Cofanes when you were. It was was it the first D of the Cofanes, and
Yeah.
you kind of had to use some rope work to safely navigate it.
Yeah, there was this one drop that was unescoutable back then.
Actually, tell us about the Cofanes. 'Cause probably a lot of people don't know about it. It's a badass river.
Oh,
in
the
Ecuador.
Rio Cofanes. This is 2010. Barely any kayakers around. Like, no kayakers around, really. So my friend Brian Snyder from North Carolina, he was working for one of the kayaking companies down there, and he had like a week off available to him during between work. So he's like, I got 7 days. I got these 75-mile river that I want to go do, but I don't know if we can do it in a week. And I was like, well, I got a shorter option over here. I've been looking out for a few years, but I don't know if it goes. And Brian takes a look of the topo map, and he's like, dude, the gradient is fantastic. It's just super boxed in. And there's a waterfall right here at this confluence. And it's like, oh my God. I never thought there would be someone crazy enough to say that we should go over here. And all of a sudden, it's like, shit, I guess we should go. I had my cracked 8.5, so the Nomad 8.5, and I was like, all right, well, I guess I'm gonna weld it good before we go. And it'll be really nice to have a third person. And the third person showed up, someone from Alaska, Brandon Gonski has randomly dropped down to Ecuador, was working for one of the companies that was working down there at the time, and we didn't know. Someone recommended us to contact him, that he's a photographer and he likes to paddle class 5, and we have never even met him before. And so brief interview on the phone.
That's a heavy thing to get into.
No, yeah, it's not ideal.
So you interviewed him on the phone, not
on
even
the
in
phone.
person.
Hey, how you doing, man? We got an expedition kind of going, and it's for these dates. Are you available? And it's like, yeah, I do run class 5 in the States. I've run everything in Washington, these and that, and and it's like, okay, well, these guys run the shit. I guess he qualifies. Do you have equipment? He's like, yeah, I have all my gear, all the gear I need, and I'm a photojournalist. So it's like, all right, you got the job. Damn. So randomly we set up. Back then we didn't have WhatsApp or maps or anything. We had agreed to meet in the middle of the road. He came from the jungle side, and I came from the top of the mountains, and we met on this little town in the middle of nowhere, along the border with Colombia. And then I had spotted on Google Earth, like they were starting to build this road over this pass, and the road was built all the way to the top of the pass. And then that's as far as the vehicle, the 4x4, could make it. And then we had to hike in from that point, a couple miles down to this village that was like right to where all these little rivers meet, and it looked navigable. And then the gradient becomes very nice around the 2,000 meters elevation. And yeah, we hiked in, put in the next morning, and started heading down into these box canyons downstream. And so yeah, when we got to the second gorge that we found, and there was no way to scout this drop besides getting connected to the tow tether and getting lowered by these two guys. They lowered me to the edge of it, and I kind of swam along the wall. And I was able to take a look of the bottom of the drop, and then it was like, it's on, here it goes. But we don't know what is around the corner, so it was really a gamble out there.
That's intense.
Yeah.
But everything went.
Magically, it went. It was really cool. Yeah, that specific second gorge, that box canyon's got 3 drops, and all of a sudden opens up again. And it was such a relief. And then because it's open, you're just like going cruising these beautiful, just class 4 boulder gardens non-stop, goes and goes and goes and goes, and all of a sudden both sides of the mountains, it starts just getting steeper and steeper and steeper, and the box just becomes 1,000 foot deep, and then you just look up and you're like, oh my god, we're so trapped in here. And that was our second day, and we had to fucking sleep in the like a couple miles before the confluence. So it turns out that first day, or from the put-in to the confluence of the Cofanes and El Dorado is 40 kilometers, and we had to sleep 2 miles before the confluence, and it rained all night. We were sitting up all night because there was no flat spot. We only had found a little spot where a creek comes in, and if we had to, we would have to hike up out of there. So that was our one of the longest nights I've ever had in my life.
Brutal, man.
Yeah, like drizzling all night and just having water dripping on top of you, very little sleep, and every time you just turn on the light and look at that water, and it's like, oh my god, it's gonna come up. And it's like, yeah, thankfully it didn't come up very much, and we were able to finish the confluence the next day. Or we were able to make it to the confluence, and then boat down into the El Dorado. But yeah, a very committing gorge, and I will never suggest to anyone to spend the night there. It took us 4 days to do that.
4 days total.
Wow. But we paddle all the way to Lumbaki. Nowadays, we just do an overnighter on it. But the first day is one of the best whitewater days that you can ever have or expect. But you start at 7 in the morning, and if everything goes well, you are at the confluence by 4 p.m. So you have very, very little time to spare. And once you make it to the confluence with El Dorado, you are out of the main box canyon and then into a very large canyon, but it has you have room to move.
Okay.
Yeah, I like to stay at the confluence, and then so that makes the second day a little longer.
Because like anything in Ecuador, you don't know what's going to happen overnight.
You don't know, never what's going to happen, and there's so many creeks coming in, and all it takes is one that will blow up, and then it'll change your game. So honestly, for that river, the lower it is, the better. We've done once, we run it 3 times in the same season, and then the third time we took it a little bit higher, and it was like such a treat. It was incredible. But since then there was a big change at the very end where the waterfall used to be. A big boulder rolled down, and the waterfall disappeared. Now it's a portage. It's very difficult to run, and then a high water will be super. It'll be, I don't know if you can even portage it, and you can't run it. So that's the downside of that section, and it's like what holds people back, because you don't know what is going to be there, and no one's run it for I don't know, 3 or 4 years now.
Oh, really?
So next time we go in there,
it could be totally different now, huh?
Totally different. I wish that waterfall was back. It was like the nicest 20-foot waterfall in Ecuador. For several times. And then one day we show up, and it's like there's nothing there. No, there's a ginormous hole, and both sides are sieved out and undercut, and then we had to do the gnarliest portage ever. And next time we go, definitely bring a drill and put in some bolts there to try to allow to do a little safer portaging there on the right side. But that's the crux really, because it's when it becomes the steepest. You're half mile from the confluence. You can see the Dorado at the end. You see the light at the end of the tunnel. But that last gorge is 10 miles long, and it's you're boxed in. You start feeling the claustrophobia in there. But
I bet.
You just keep going. You gotta be safe and save energy for that portage. The portage takes 1 to 2 hours.
Oh, damn. That's huge.
Yeah, it's an interesting one. It's a pretty cool river.
Yeah.
Bedrock for days is incredible. Granite is like California, except with a lot of jungle on the sides. But the river feel, everything is just like that beautiful polished granite.
That sounds
One
amazing.
of the most amazing rivers I've ever seen, for sure. Can't wait to go back. Now with my shoulder back in place, it's like, feels great.
Very cool. Maybe it's changed for the better.
I hope so.
Yeah.
Knocking on wood.
It's crazy. There's like being in Colorado, things don't change that much, like the geologic changes that occur over a short period of time in Ecuador.
Every
hard
6
for me to wrap my
months.
mind around.
Every 6 months is like, Jesus, like first descent of the Oyacachi changed back in September. So it was different than I saw it the last time I paddled it. And then back in March, there was a big water event, and it just blew it up again. And it is completely changed. Everything gets shuffled around, so it just keeps you on your toes. Like the general feel of the river is there, but you gotta be watching out. Last time I went to the Papayacta, it was so disshuffled that I couldn't even recognize the river. And I went back this year after 4 or 5 years, and it was like such a treat. It was very nice, channelized, one portage, but that was it.
Yeah.
It was very cool to see it again.
Nice.
Yeah.
Yeah.
For the changes for the better. Not always though.
Not always.
But you can't trust yourself, so always gotta go down with that in mind, that it can change overnight and you don't.
Yeah. Be paranoid. Yeah.
Unfortunately, but it keeps you honest.
All right, so I know that it's a very controversial subject in safety gear, which is the tow tether. We've talked about it a little bit already, but let's get into a little bit about like why you need a tow tether, or what uses it has, and kind of how it can be functional and get you out of potentially like intractable situations on the river.
I am a big fan of that. Tow tether is definitely helped me in several situations. I think it's one of the coolest gadgets you can have. When you see those monkeys hanging off their tails, it's like, I'm jealous. I'm envious of not having a tail, But safety-wise on the river, I feel like it comes really handy in several ways. A lot of times, talking with people, I have commented and said, like, if I don't come out of there, or I disappear, just know that I'll be waiting for that rope and I'm gonna clip it on. I mean, if you want your rope back, you'll have to pull me out. So just with that in mind, I'll be waiting for that rope. Just throw me a rope. And I can see several situations where it can become a problem, like as a lot of people have reported that the tow tether doesn't work for these or that, and it is true. It has some kinks on it. If you are loaded sideways to it, it will not release. If it creates an extra bite on the belt, it creates so much friction that it's not going to release necessarily. But if you end up pinned on a log and I can see you and I can put a rope on you and you can clip on, you bet your ass I'm gonna pull you out. I'm gonna try to anchor you, so stabilize you. That will prevent you from falling in any deeper or go under the log or something like that. If I can clip that onto you, and then I can anchor on the other end, and I can apply a vectorial force on that line, I'm gonna apply infinite force, says the book, and I can pull you out of a really sticky situation, hopefully in the right direction. Most people uses this for towing boats, and a lot of people don't like it. I like it because in the environment that I'm used to, bigger water, very continuous, like Ecuador, or a place where you are so remote, and if you lose your boat or your gear, you're pretty screwed. So I always tell people during trips or in any situation, really, like, don't worry about the gear. Gear is replaceable, and we can get to your gear faster if you swim to shore. Just find the closest shore and get to shore just safely. Get out of the water, and then I can go after the boat. It sucks when I see someone chasing a boat for miles trying to push it with the boat, and yeah, it works, but it's not very effective. It's like it's so much going on, if it has float bags, if it doesn't have float bags, and then how you catch it and all that. Now if I clip onto a boat, what I like to do, if possible, is like I turn downstream and I start going for the closest shore I can, or at least if I have a swimmer and I see him swimming to the right side, I'm going to try to take that boat to the right side if that's an option. Just to minimize the distance they have to walk back to their boat or such a thing.
And walking through the jungle can be a dangerous
oh
thing
man,
on its own,
that's
right?
why I feel like I became such a better boater. It was like I don't want to hike in the jungle, I don't want to portage, I don't want to get out of my kayak. I like to be in my boat. Being in the jungle is very uncomfortable. Sometimes it can be, unless, or like Stuxbury says, like with some gloves and machetes, not that bad. He ain't scared of jungle. I am. But honestly, so those are some of the main applications. But also,
I have a question on that though, because
yeah.
I remember getting my first rescue vest and I was so excited to use it, and I quickly found out that it can be dangerous, right? Like it's legitimate. I think I tried to clip into something that wasn't in super fast moving water, but it was moving, and I ended up getting a big pull that flipped me, and I was trying to roll up, and like it was pulling me back down, and then like I finally rolled up. I was like, oh shit, get me off of this thing, and I like pulled my tether and got off of that thing as fast as I could. And then I changed my attitude a lot to it. Like how do you prepare to do stuff like you're just talking about, to do it safely?
Training. That will make you proficient, and everybody that has a rescue vest and is willing to use it needs to know and test how these works. So these rescue classes that I teach, I'm a big fan of letting people use it, and we put you in the middle of the current, connected to a rope to both sides of the river, and actually you can control yourself, but there's a point that either you want to let go because the pressure on your chest is so big, and that's we try to push it to failure, right? And then most of these setups have a tri-glide. If you pass it twice, making 2 bites through the tri-glide, it has you need to check on every manufacturer's recommendations to see the ratings, what it has been tested, because it has been tested. And it says I feel like it's 2,500 pounds of resistance before it starts slipping. If you go twice through the tri-glide, if you go once, it's about 800 pounds. So it's still a lot of pressure, but in some occasions you don't want to even think to get loose. And where you're using it for a real rescue, you need to access, for example, somebody. Or like I was explaining on that second gorge in the Cofanes, like getting lowered to a drop, with walled in and an escutable. I don't feel like I'm gonna really make sure that thing doesn't go anywhere, and it makes me feel safe to know what is the resistance on that. But at the same time, like I've connected to boats in the middle of a rapid, and then I have tried to release, and like I explained before, if it's loaded sideways, it will create an extra bite and so much friction that it will not release effectively. So feeling comfortable with your equipment is gonna make a huge difference on the outcome. If you ever try to connect or swim a rope across the river, you're gonna really feel forces. So in rescue training, we make people swim across connected to a rope, and the drag that a 1/4-inch rope has, like that pro kayak rescue rope, being that thin, and the amount of drag that has into the current is brutal. Imagine like a thicker rope, the amount of force being applied to the person is really savage. So when you actually receive, or you're towing a boat, you want them to take the load of you. I don't want you to grab me or grab or grab my kayak because I'm still being pulled by that kayak. Kayak, when you think about a kayak, is about 90 gallons, a full-size kayak, 90 gallons filled up with water into the current is a lot of weight that you're dragging, and then so taking the load of the rescuer is super important. And then that's how you can assist a rescuer at that point. What else? Another application I can see very useful with those vests and having a hard point to clip onto your body is, for example, doing a diagonal crossing on a creek. You can create some sort of zip line, and then if you put one anchor higher than the other one, you can zip across, and or even a boat. If you with these tension diagonals, you can clip on a boat and get it across the river effectively if you can have enough rope to get it across without having to swim or put somebody back into the water.
That's a pretty cool one. So it's attached to a tree or even a rock or something
exactly, or even a human anchor, because the drag is not that dramatic, because if the load is traveling on the current, so you're using the angles, and you're using the current to zip these objects across, or a person. So yeah, that's a really good useful way to get someone evac or to the opposite side of the river.
So a human could just do that with just pulling it around their waist to
quick and dirty.
Anchor it.
Quick and dirty. Yeah, you anchor yourself lower and around your waist, staying off the bite. And then lean back, put tension on that. The more tension you have on that rope, the faster you're going to travel. And if you put a pulley on that rope either to an object or to a person, and you jump into the water, it's going to zip you across super fast.
I love that one.
Yeah, quick and dirty. But like I said, you got to train. You got to figure out what works best, angles and all that. And training will make perfect. Is the only way. What other applications with those? Safety wise, like hold on to a rope, clip on and jump into the water. Strong swimmer. That's one of the most the highest exposure you can have as a rescuer when jumping into the water connected to a rope. It's a bad place, but sometimes if somebody's unconscious, for example, coming out of they're not going to hold on to a rope, and then if you can hold on, that's one of the drills we do on those rescue classes as well. So anyway, just one more thing that you can think about of those uses, but I'm a big fan of that monkey tail.
Yeah, it's like any tool, huh? You need to learn how to use it correctly, but if you gadgets. Do, it opens up possibilities.
Yeah. And having the opportunity of training a lot with those has given me confidence, and still I have had issues with it. It doesn't matter how much training I put onto it. The river, like you said, is so dynamic. It's always going to change, and sometimes you're towing a boat and it goes on the wrong side of a rock, and now you're like pinned in the middle of it. But that's why it's a quick release, and that's why you need to have that tail. That's also doesn't need to be twisted, because if it's twisted or too long of a tail, it can jam into the tri-glide. So another thing to think about it, kind of customize it to your rescue PFD. Just cut it and have just as long as you need it. Because if a twist goes in there, then it's not a quick release anymore. Or I even seen the tail is so long, some people make a knot at the end of it.
Oh no!
And it's like, that's not gonna be very good. But I hope that you're not trying to tow something heavy with it.
That's great. I think that if there's anything, out of kind of everything we said, it's just like taking the time to actually train and thinking about safety and practicing it rather than just doing it on the river. Because when it's on the river, you'll learn something, but it might be too late for that situation.
No, those are the hard lessons. Those you're like, fuck, I shouldn't do that, or I should have done it differently, or something like that. It's better to do it during training, because you can do everything should be more controlled, and and you're aware that things can go wrong. So that's when you learn, when you fail. So being able to fail safely is crucial. And one of the biggest concerns with this tow tether, I feel like it's like people are concerned about being snagged onto something. So the belt, by being a quick release, is an advantage, and that's how I feel comfortable dragging the tether around. But if the other end is not on a quick release, or now the D-rings on Kokotak PFDs, for example, they're not complete. They're actually cut open. So when you are actually, that's where I clip my carabiner at the end of the tow tether, because if it snags on something, it just like boom, it breaks loose.
Yeah, that's clever. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that feature on the Kokotak PFDs.
Probably anyone could buy those rings, right? I mean, they must be available.
If you have D-rings, those plastic D-rings that are in one piece, you can just get a pair of pliers and put a cut on it, and it'll hold. It'll be the same. Also, a zip tie, those tiny little zip ties that break the tiny ones.
Yeah.
The breaking rate on those are like 4 to 5 pounds, and you can have several of them on your PFD if you don't have like a quick release breakpoint. But what I see a lot of times is this tether gets connected on a hard point, like the shoulder strap or something like that. And now that becomes dangerous, because if you are attached to, if you end up snagged onto something and you're attached to your person or your PFD, making a hard point, now that can become a really big issue. But if it's on a break loose point on one end, and a quick release on the belt, then it's designed to loose. So I feel like if I get snagged onto something, which I never have, because of the way that I have it set up, it just cuts loose and it can drag, and then if it snags again, I can. But I'm used to it. I've pulled that rescue vest over 100 times under load, because of the amount of training that I have done.
That's incredible.
And it's super fun to play with it. And the dynamics that you can have with the rescue PFD are super awesome. I can't wait to do some videos and stuff and following classes now.
That'd be awesome. Now
just trying to focus on, just share a little more information that will be useful for kayakers, to make it more dynamic on how to use this tool. I think it's one of the coolest gadgets that you can have. That, a throw bag, is super basic, but if you know how to use it correctly, it can just go so long ways. And
you mentioned on that Foss rescue that you had to go back to your boat to get some pulleys and stuff. Do you keep certain amount of stuff in your PFD now?
Always with me. I have 2 pulleys, 2 pressics, and a couple pieces of webbing. Because I'm just mostly kayaking, the webbing I'm using like a half inch, and also there's like 1/4 inch tubular webbing, which is like rated to 2,500 pounds or something like that, which with kayaking, when you think about the load that you're dealing with a kayak, 8 pounds per gallon on a 90 gallon boat, you are within those rates. If you're rafting, then definitely these forces are gonna multiply. So like the bigger webbing makes sense, which it makes your PFD heavier. And I don't like that much, but like I said, with like light equipment, I try to go. But basically, I always like to have that on my person, because if I end up swimming, for example, and my gear ends up somewhere else and I need it, it's gonna suck. But let's hope that doesn't happen.
Yeah, don't we all? On that note, what do you think of the waist bag, like throw up waist bags?
When I go on expeditions, I actually carry 2 bags, which sounds a little obsessive, but I like 175 foot. The rescue kayak, the pro rescue kayak rope in my kayak, and it stays there. And then I like to have the waist bag, and those have a quick release as well. Yeah. And but it has come handy. In Mexico, I had like we were running El Salto at high water, and we had like uh, we a Carnage Fest in the same hole. There was five people surfing at the same time.
What?
Yeah, and then one made it. I got to the shore, and there was three people still getting worked in the same hole, and I get to shore, and all of a sudden I'm getting out, and I grab this stick on the side of the river, and it breaks, boom, as I'm getting out. So I end up swimming right next to the hole. So my boat adds up to the three people that are getting worked in there. So there's four boats, three people, and I'm in shore just like watching this carnage. But I had the rescue belt, and it was like I was so glad I had it. One of those situations that most times, I don't know, it's very helpful to have a rope with you when you're on the river. So that one comes pretty handy. I've seen some people carry like a backpack a little higher, sometimes it's uncomfortable, but it's when you're in the middle of nowhere and you don't know if you're going to end up with a rope or not, it's like I prefer to have a rope.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know when I took safety classes, they're a fan of that, right? Like they said you should bring a rope on you and a rope in your boat. I know when I interviewed Gareth, the Kiwi guy that you were saying you just listened to recently, I don't know which order all these will come out, but he was not a fan of them because he had some bad incidents where it had snagged on things and caused a dangerous situation, and you couldn't get to the release kind of situation.
Yeah, see, everybody has different perspectives.
Everything's a trade-off, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I can see that. Just anything outside, yeah. You want to be low profile out there to avoid snagging. Yeah. So
I paddled with those little astral throw ropes, that go right at your chest.
Yeah.
Which you feel it a little bit, like it kind of gets in the way sometimes when you're moving, the bulk. But it's overall, I think it's a pretty effective way to
so nice. I have seen that rope saving lives for sure. Like someone just jumps out of the river and like has that on it, and boom, take somebody out. It's like, if you don't have to swim rapid, man, it's sometimes acting fast is very, very, very cool. But again, what are you comfortable with, and the only way that you're gonna get comfortable and using any piece of equipment is gonna be by training.
Yeah, that practice.
Technique
time. Here in Colorado, we have no excuse. The water's low for so much of the year.
Yeah,
there's all kinds of time we could go out and do that. And like you said, it could be fun. Like it's fun to get out on the river and
you can
rig up
do
systems.
Drinking games, like throwing bags out in the backyard with a tire over there, and staying sharp on your rescue skills if you're a shed runner. Or whether you're not, but it's still like if you're a beginner boater, and that's actually where you're gonna be seeing a lot more rescues as well, more often anyway. And being able to effectively help somebody with a rope is just the person that you're helping is gonna be a lot more thankful for your help, and it's gonna make you feel good too.
Yeah.
Just that, because if you don't, it doesn't matter if you come out once a year, that you're actually gonna deploy your rope. Let's hope that you have good aim. But if you haven't trained, sometimes it's pretty sad to see like an easy rescue with a rope, just a single toss could have made the difference between somebody swimming the next rapid down or not. And it was because all of a sudden, you don't know, it's knotted, or you just haven't used that rope for a full year, and all of a sudden you just like went it went in a completely different direction than you thought, and it was like
The following story involves a fatality on the river. If you're sensitive to this type of information, you can skip ahead 11 minutes. You have a pretty serious story on the Green Truss about where equipment wasn't there and it might have made a difference. Do you want to talk a little bit about that?
Yeah, the outcome on the Green Truss, that specific time that we were going down, it was late summer. The river started dropping significantly every day, about an inch every day. And it was it was yeah, it was a crew of 4 people, and then the lower zigzag rapid had a huge log jam on the narrowest part of it, and they were creating like these scissors looking feature in the middle of it, and it was really gnarly. But we had been running the left side over the logs prior to that, but the day before, it was probably the last time we decided it was the last time we ran that left side, because the logs were starting to get off the water, and we stopped right above this rapid. One person decided to walk around the log jam, and then the other 3, we were gonna run it. So above the log jam, and then we decided that what is the line? We're gonna run the lower zigzag, and then we're gonna catch the eddy above the log jam, and we're gonna sneak under the logs on the right side against the wall. There was a little passage. It was low enough that we can make it, and it was pretty simple. After that, so this guy Chris that was with us, I had just met the day before. He did. So we all agree on the line that we were gonna have, and I was the first one down into the eddy. Then my friend Andy did the same, and then Chris was coming down third, and all of a sudden he just changed his mind, I guess, and decided to take the line that he has taken the day before. And then when he hit the log, his boat just like went up straight up in the air and kind of salmon and kind of like came down really vertical behind. When he did that, his bow went under a log, and all of a sudden just zipped sideways into the middle of the logs, into the main current of the white salmon.
Sure.
At that point, yeah, we knew that shit just went wrong, and all of a sudden, yeah, Andy was on the left side. He paddled back to the left side because he felt like he was in his boat in the middle of the river, and he just paddled to the left side, got out of his kayak, and went down. I got on the right side, and immediately I had a rope on Chris in like a matter of seconds, like 30 seconds. I got out of my kayak, ran, and like zoom, just the first thing, most basic thing I can do before anything is try to help him out. And he was you could see his helmet completely out of the water, and he was holding on tight. Then river left side, it starts getting on the logs, and all of a sudden he takes a bad step, and he falls behind the log jam and gets swept downstream. And all of a sudden it's like, fuck, the rescue looked good until now, like we were gonna be able to help him out or something, and all of a sudden it's just it's just me holding on the rope. And then so I started trying to pull to see if he can get cut loose or something like that.
Yeah.
And every time I put tension on that rope, he started letting go. And then I would just collect my rope again, and boom, throw it again, boom, hold him. But every time he let go of the rope, he will go a little deeper and a little deeper and a little deeper. And there was I didn't know what to do, so I clipped a carabiner at the end of the rope, hoping that he could feel it and hopefully like cinch around him or something like that, so he can actually be trapped inside the rope and I could pull him. But I will give him a few seconds, and then all of a sudden, I mean, it was impossible that he could hear me. All of a sudden his helmet is underwater, but he's still holding onto the rope for dear life, and I'm just trying to slowly pull him, and then every time I try to do that, he's letting go, and until he couldn't really hold on anymore. Once he stopped, and this was a matter of 10 minutes, right? but it felt forever. All of a sudden, like I jumped on those logs and went down the log into the water, like just like straddling the log. And then like because I could reach him, I could see him, and I'm just reaching desperately for his the back of his PFD, hoping that he has one of these rescue belts so I can clip him on and hopefully pull him out of through there. But there was none. It was just like a very simple PFD, and it was, the water was so cold and so fast I could not go any deeper without going myself into the log. It was just like the adrenaline made me go crazy and go in there, like try to do just whatever I could, and I was able to reach the right side of the PFD and the shoulder strap. So I put an anchor on that and hoped that I could just like pull him out of there. I don't understand how I was able to reach in there that day, because I went back the next day and it was like there was no way I could like I could go back to the same spot. Somehow I managed to come back to shore, walking over the logs and stuff. I put a 3-to-1 and started pulling easily, and all of a sudden just boom, snapped the shoulder strap, front and back panel. And it was at that point it was already getting dark, and it really sucked to be on the other end of the spectrum, where you're the one having to call for help. And
I can't imagine.
No, it was really fucked up. What I was hoping for, it was that he had a rescue PFD where I could clip onto that rescue belt and hopefully have an anchor point to his body and like extract him that way. But that's why I commented on that and felt like that could have been the difference. But or maybe he was so pinned into that kayak, because he was in his kayak until the next day in the middle of the river there, like until we were able to go in and get him out.
I guess you don't know for sure, but it would be something at least.
Something, and that's why you have to like have every time you put a PFD, like cinch it down around your body, so to make sure that doesn't come off. It's sometimes I've seen a lot of boaters just like with the loosest PFD that you can possibly have. It feels good for freedom, but it's designed to stay on you only if it's cinched down. Otherwise it can come right off. But personal decisions there. I'm
sorry for that experience, but I appreciate that you kind of wanted to share that to exemplify that this isn't just we're not just talking about it for fun or for an academic purpose. It's like it was really important when shit hits the fan, and it does occasionally. I mean, whitewater is a dynamic environment, and things can happen.
And then shit hits the fan quick in the water, as we know. That's why it's such a unique sport, and we all love it. But that occasion, that was a big toll on. I couldn't go back. I couldn't go back to the river for a little while because I couldn't touch cold water. I was so cold. I was wearing dry top, and I was freezing because that white salmon water is so cold. Freaking cold, and again, just to learn one more learning experience of that was like, I don't wear my dry suit just for myself, for my personal protection, but if I have to help somebody in such a cold water, I'm useless if I'm not wearing a dry suit in those kind of situations and circumstances. So going back to basics, and then the difference that equipment can make. And
I heard that early on, lessons from people that had a lot more experience than me when I'd started, right? They said, always dress for the swim, dress for the rescue. Like, don't just dress to be comfortable in your boat.
You never know what can happen. And we are all guilty for, dry top will be fine. But it takes a couple bad experiences, and then you learn a lot. And I wish the outcome of that rescue would have been different, but it wasn't. And we all know the rules in this game, and did everything possible to get him out, and it was very frustrating to feel, you know, super confident on rescue skills and think that I could get him out, and all of a sudden it's like, no, there was no way I can.
It sounds like you did everything possible, and it was just it
was crazy,
impossible
man.
situation.
Hard, one of the hardest situations I've ever dealt with kayaking, for sure.
Yeah, I've never had to deal with that, but I understand how difficult that would be. All right, Abe. Well, thanks so much for spending some time with me today. Do you have any concluding thoughts? Like, where can people find you if they're interested in paddling with you in Ecuador? What services do you offer, and how do they get a hold of you?
Well, through social media, always it's how people have found me the most. But yeah, boofsessions.com, and send a message, or maybe this year I'll be around the Pacific Northwest in Colorado. So look forward to meet some folks around there, and yeah, anytime if anybody has any questions, I'm always keen on helping people out down in Ecuador, whether it's a tour or a boat rental, a shuttle, or whatever you guys need.
That's awesome, man. Thanks so much.
Thank you, Kevin, for having me here. It's a pleasure.